What's going on, everyone? We're gonna get started in just a second. Let me know if you can hear me okay. I'll just make sure everybody can hear me. Oh, sound is good. All right, cool. Okay, so we're gonna be getting started with the stream here. The topic is learning new languages. So as I go through some of the meta topics that I do with every stream, channel announcements and whatnot, go ahead and ask any questions you want in the chat. You can prefix it with Q colon question or question colon, and then what it'll do is it'll push it over to me on Discord and it'll make sure that I get a chance to answer it. Sometimes things get lost in chat, but if you use those prefixes on your question, then it will get to me in Discord. So as I'm going through the some of the meta topics, channel announcements, please go ahead and throw that into the chat. And we'll be doing a Q&A right after the channel announcements. So not a whole lot of stuff for the channel announcements thing. The first is, of course, the question system, which I just went over. Probably the biggest thing after that is going to be stickers. We have a new design of stickers. It looks like, let me show you here. It looks like, oh, I got a thing in the way. Hold on. Looks like that. So we got these sweet circle stickers. It was actually donated by a person named Emmett. He's on the server. He's a Nitro booster and supporter. He donated some sticker mule credit to us to get a total of 300 stickers. So to that end, I'm going to be giving away some of them. I'm going to be selling some of them at cost, just because if I send these individually, which I won't be able to send them individually to 300 people, because I'll rack up a massive postage bill. So I'm gonna give away some. I'm gonna sell some at cost, and this batch will go out at no profit though. So I'm gonna try to distribute some of these. I'm trying to work out a way to not get killed in credit card processing fees. That way I can offer them at cost and not have some ballooned amount of cost. So I'll be creating something on EMKC, probably emkc.org/stickers at some point, and then you'll be able to pick some of these up, possibly for free. So be on the lookout for that. And also, of course, a special thanks to Emmett for donating that sticker mule credit to us. It'd be really cool to get these stickers out to people. The last thing is the fan project review, and this is something that, let me put stream segments back up. So the last stream of the, oh nice, French Fruits, thanks for the $9.99. Question, what's the best way to help support the channel regularly? Also, hi. The best way, hope you got your sticker. I know I sent you one. The best way to help the channel is going to be to just bring new people to the channel, to help them with the learning and help them with embarking on a very rewarding journey that is programming and engineering. So that's the primary way. And if you do that, that's fantastic. Also, if you want to fund portions of the stickers, if you want to make a donation for the stickers, I'm only collecting donations for stickers up to the point where it's free to send them all out, and after that, I'll happily send every single one for free. So if you're interested in doing that, you'll let me know in Discord or somewhere else, and we'll work something out. So also, thank you very much. Longtime supporter of the channel, French Fruits. Thanks for $9.99, and hope you enjoy the stream. So the last thing is fan project review. The very last stream of season 2, Engineer Man Streams, is going to be a project review that I do on fan submitted projects. And I've gotten some submissions so far. I still have plenty of slots open. I mean, it's going to be a full probably 40 to 50 minutes of just looking at really cool projects that people have sent me. And if you want to see your project on the final stream of this season, send me an email at projectreview@engineerman.org and tell me your project. Send me a GitHub that has your project. Tell me a little bit about it. Send me really cool stuff. I've done this a couple times before, and people never cease to amaze me on some of the really cool things that they send me. So if you want a project that shows up on the stream, send it to projectreview@engineerman.org, and I'll put that email also in the description at the end of this stream. If you're watching a recording of this stream, it'll already be there. And that's really it for the meta topics. There's really nothing else to announce. So let's jump into some Q&A. What do you think is the languages everyone should learn in 2020? So I actually put out a video that said the top 5 languages to learn, and I believe I picked JavaScript, Python, C#, PHP, and I don't remember the last one, but those are probably the top languages to learn, and that's just based on this kind of overall, you know, if you look at languages overall and you look at their complexity, if you look at their community size, if you look at their third-party modules, if you look at how much they're being used out in the wild, their stability, and then, of course, how easy it is to get going, then the languages that I put out in that video are probably the best ones at the moment. Do you think it's worth learning other styles like functional programming? The answer is yes, but maybe not immediately, because functional programming sometimes is a little bit harder to grasp. So if you start out with a more imperative style programming, then that might serve you better in the near term. But if you're planning on being, you know, a programming polyglot, you know, meaning you know all types of different languages, then you're going to want a strong understanding of functional programming and functional programming principles. That way you can be versatile in that way, because you will come across languages that are highly functional in nature, and you're going to see functions being used in ways that you wouldn't have seen them in other languages. And like, for instance, JavaScript for each, actually you pass a callback function that runs for every item in an array. Whereas, you know, PHP, you just use a for construct, or in Python, you use a for construct. So sometimes it looks kind of different, and you got to understand why it's doing it like that. So it'll make you a better programmer if you definitely understand functional programming, in short. Alexandru asked, I find it hard to think in logical steps sometimes because I have a tendency to skip some of them. What do you recommend I should improve so I can become better at programming and logic? I think the best answer to that is going to be try to really stick to the basics. And the reason I say basics is because basics is going to be the same across all languages, and basics is going to be the foundation from which you build more complex things. And that's to say that, you know, think about a CPU. You know, a CPU can only do some really basic things, yet the resulting thing from a CPU is all the software we have here. You know, the stream is occurring, you know, because of a CPU doing really basic things. So the point is that lots of basic things, excuse me, lots of basic things can do a lot of more advanced things. So you should focus on basics, and then the rest will come. Would you recommend learning Go or something else? Well, I mean, I think everybody should learn Go. I think it's a new up-and-coming language with a lot of really interesting value props in the language, and there's lots of good reasons to actually use that language. So I think you should learn it, and there doesn't really need to be an or something else. You know, you can always learn Go and something else, or you can learn something else and then Go. You know, you don't necessarily have to pick one. Like, good programmers know enough languages to be able to choose the right language for the problem. And this is important because if you just know one language, then you limit yourself to one thing. So if you have problems A, B, and C, but you only know language A, then, you know, maybe you shouldn't be using language A for problem B, but you have to because it's the only one you know. So, you know, Go has an interesting value prop in that it gives you a binary at the end, yet it writes kind of like Python almost. You know, it's simpler syntax, and so that's very interesting. So you get almost like, you get the speed of a compiled language with the expressiveness of a more dynamic language like Python. So Vancha March asks, how does one learn to move from writing functions in classes to actually writing complex programs in any language? So, I mean, complex programs are often just lots of functions grouped together and lots of common functionality grouped together, sometimes called classes. So I guess, when we think of complex programs, we just think of a lot of simple things, lumped together into what would be a complex program. So I guess the answer to that is going to be you need to learn how to make a bunch of smaller things work well together. And that's really all a big program is smaller things working together. However, it's not immediately obvious maybe how to do that, because if you work on small programs, maybe you never get to the point where you have so much code that has to interoperate with each other. And then when you go to actually do that, you aren't really sure how to. So the best way to learn how to write large software is to learn how to make small software interoperate with each other. I'm going to skip that one. That Python question, I'm going to skip that one, the compression decompression. Please ask that in Discord. I don't want to, that's too specific of a question to answer here on stream. I apologize for that. Juan Ramos asks, what's the best way to not confuse functions and syntax when learning new languages? And we're actually going to talk about that today in the stream. This whole stream is this idea of you need to learn a new language or you want to learn a new language, and it's going to be how you can go about that without getting frustrated over it or feeling like you're not making any progress. And I picked Rust because Rust is kind of a hard language. It's one that I personally have looked at numerous times over the last 5 years, but I haven't actually spent a solid amount of time learning it and actually working with it and all that. It was actually only when I started producing the Rust videos that I really started working with Rust a lot. So it's kind of new to me. I mean, I understood all the concepts of it prior to working a great deal on it, but I never produced anything of any real value or anything that wasn't trivial. So we're going to talk a lot about that today and how not to confuse things. Okay, take a couple more questions and we're going to jump into the main content. I think knowing computer science fundamentals first is the key for any language. What's your take on this? So I think that is not accurate. And the reason I say that is, so I've gone over my educational background. I did not go to college immediately. I went to college later in my life. So like when I went to college for electrical engineering, the reason I did electrical engineering is because I was already an accomplished technologist and I didn't want to kind of overlap. There was no point in going to college to learn things that I already knew. So I picked a different major that was something that was related but still different from, like CS. So the reason I don't think that that's necessary, well, for one, because I did it. I have all the knowledge of a computer science graduate without a computer science degree. And I did that because I was very interested in the topic. But the thing is people can be good programmers without understanding like really low-level computer science topics. And that's just because sometimes the language hides a lot of the things that you learn, say, in a computer science degree. So, like maybe in computer science you learn about hash tables, but you're using Python, which has dictionaries, which is basically a hash table, and maybe you don't even know that's a hash table. And you don't even care that that's a hash table because you just know that you can set and delete keys from it and retrieve values, and you as the Python programmer don't really care how it's working internally, and therefore knowing about a hash table can't really help you. And even if you knew about a hash table, could you really optimize Python code to make it faster? The thing is, Python has already done that, so what's the point? But now that isn't to say that you should not learn computer science fundamentals. Of course you should. You should absolutely learn that, and many other things that you find interesting. But to your specific question, is computer science fundamentals a prerequisite for being a programmer? I have to say no. I don't think that's the case. Not in 2019, 2020, with the amount of technology out there that sort of hides a lot of those complexities. However, if you are just a Python programmer and you can't state what happens internally to Python, and you can't state how Python even came to be, and you can't state what operations are occurring at the CPU or at the assembly level, then you probably are not going to be a well-rounded programmer in that case. You'll be limited to just a guy that knows Python, and that's it. So you should aim to be curious and interested enough in these computer science topics, because they are both interesting and necessary if you want to be kind of really skilled in your trade. That was kind of a long answer to say kind of, but no, but I guess it works. All right, one more question, and then we're going to jump into the main topic. We're going to start learning a brand new language that we call Rust. Last thing, React or Angular for web dev. It's just preference. I prefer React. A lot of people prefer Angular. I would say the best thing is, and the reason I'm answering this question, even though it's kind of specific, is that learning a new framework is kind of like learning a new language, because the framework oftentimes wraps a lot of core functionality from the language, and you end up writing this kind of highly abstracted version in the framework, and it's not like the main language itself. So that's really just a depends. My opinion is I think React is the way forward, but Angular is good too. It has things that React doesn't do, and vice versa. Okay, let's jump into the main content, and I will do another Q&A at the end. So if anybody wants to put in any additional questions. Also, I don't know if my question system's working. Let's see. One moment. All right, let's jump in to the main content. All right, so stream segments, get rid of that. I think we're all set. Okay, so for the stream, I am making one assumption, and the assumption is that you've looked into at least one other language. You don't necessarily have to know one other language, you just have to have looked into one. If you're here as a brand new programmer and you have absolutely no programming knowledge, and you're trying to find the first language you should learn, and maybe you're not even sure what an if statement is or anything like that, then you might find this content a little hard. You will benefit from some of it, but I'm going to, obviously the stream's only another 40 minutes, so I'm not able to make it 5 hours where I actually go through lengthy research and whatnot. So I'll be doing kind of an abridged version of it. So I'm kind of assuming that you've looked into one other language, and that when you see a common element in Rust, then you kind of relate that to another language. So I'll be making that assumption. So there's kind of like a before and during, and I originally just had, and when I say before and during, I mean like during your learning and before your learning. And I kind of broke this up into two things, and we are going to do some coding in this video for sure. We're going to talk about a couple things, and then we're going to start building out a small program. And we're going to build it out in Rust. It's going to be a high-low guessing game. That's it, something really simple. But we're going to build it out. Now, I have the knowledge to just build it without really looking at much, but we're gonna build it using resources on the web, using the documentation, and I'm going to show you like my train of thought, how when I go to build the software and I'm maybe less than knowledgeable about Rust, how I'm going to go about, kind of making this work. But before we do that, we got to talk about kind of the before, because there are some considerations before you start learning that language. The first is, are you picking the right language, and is there a better language to learn? And that's totally based on your use case. Why are you picking a given language, and what is the best one for the job? So that's something that only you can determine. It's out of the scope of this stream to kind of cover all the languages and all the use cases. I actually have a good stream on that, that I think was called Exploring Numerous Programming Languages. You could certainly go watch that one. That's a great overview on really any language that appears in the top 20 of the top 20 programming lists. So EM equals the greatest. Thank you, Only G. Appreciate that. Saw that. Yeah, 5-hour EM stream hype. So that's totally up to you as to if it's the right language. And the next thing is like, is your job making you use language X? Because this is a common thing where you might you might work for a company or a project, and they're saying we're using language X. Do you know language X? And then maybe you don't, so you got to go learn it. And then the last thing to consider is versioning. And I say this just because there are languages that have different versions. Generally speaking, unless you are forced to do it another way, you should choose the newest version available. And that's because that's going to be the version that has the most amount of features, that's the most stable, and that contains the most amount of stuff. And if you have no preference on it, of course, it doesn't make sense for you to use a version of a language or technology that is kind of dated, because if you don't know about any of it anyways, then how could it possibly benefit you to use something old? If you're just starting learning, you're not going to care if you're learning version 1, 2, or 3. All you know is that you got to learn language X, technology Y, and you might as well pick the newest version. Oh, cool. Okay. So that's kind of the before. So now that you've chosen the language, and again, in this video, we're going to assume that you've chosen Rust. I've chosen Rust for the job just because it's a hard language. It's one that I've personally been using. I'm definitely not an expert at all by any means in Rust. So yeah, in this, I'm choosing Rust. So now when you're learning a new language, I want to break it down into goals that you want to attain, and then kind of the strategies that you want to use to learn the language. And one primary goal that you want to do in learning a new language is you just want to build software that functionally works. And that's it. You don't want to go crazy on it. You don't want to make it complex, because you don't want to confuse yourself as you're trying to learn a new language. So it's more important that it works, because working software does two things. Number one is it gives you a sense of satisfaction that you built something that works. And that's a really great feeling, especially if it's a difficult language and you've been working really hard at something. So it's you get that satisfaction. The second reason is that working software gives you kind of what I call a last known working state. So if you have working software, then you, in a way, have a collection of code that you now have committed to memory. And this is very important. This is actually part of one of the strategies here. Work towards a new stable understanding. And I'll explain a little bit more on what that is. And then another goal is going to be, you want to prefer clarity over efficiency. There's always going to be time to make a program faster, to make it efficient, to optimize it, to do whatever. But oftentimes that stuff comes at a cost. Maybe the code is more brief than it used to be, which makes it possibly less readable. And then also maybe you got to do it a different way or use more advanced techniques in the language. And these things in the near term will likely just confuse you, so you should not prefer that at that time. Remember, this is the learning phase. You're not trying to produce, battle-tested, bulletproof, production-ready software. You're just trying to learn a new language and get something going. So those should be your two primary goals: build working stuff and make it clear. And another reason why clear is good is because any future projects that you do in that language, you can look back at this project and you can pull some already working things from it. In a way, the more projects you build in a language, you're kind of creating this knowledge library, your own personal knowledge library of things you've done. And I do that today. Like, I'm constantly pulling things from other projects into new projects. Not like not like whole groups of functionality, but you know, if I write something that works over here and I need it over here, I'm just going to move it over there, and then I'm going to adapt it to whatever the particular use case is. Let me just check my... Did somebody ask that? Why do I always dress the same? It's funny. Oh, somebody actually asked that. That's fine. Why do I always dress the same? You know, it's a funny reason why I do it. It's all about being an efficient human being. If you know, I got like 20 pairs of these. I got like 10 pairs of the same shorts. I same hat, and it's all based on this idea that I don't have to think about what I'm going to wear, and that's just one less decision to make. It's more time I can spend doing other things. So that's kind of the reason I do it. I know it sounds kind of funny, but I've always done that. Been wearing the same thing for, you know, years now. That's all to see. I don't just do it for videos. This is actually what I wear all the time in real life. If you ever meet me in real life, I'm gonna be wearing exactly this. So it's all about being an efficient human being. And I got a couple other little things that I do. I might share those in the 250,000 video on some of that stuff, because that video is more about me as a person, who I am, kind of why I do things the way I do them. But that's the primary reason. It's just I never have to worry about it. My drawer is just full of gray t-shirts, gray hats, and you know, like OD green shorts and sandals. So yep, that's me. All right, let me just check the questions, make sure it's nothing related to what I'm talking about right now. This is definitely an interactive stream. If you have questions that are related to exactly what I'm speaking about right now, please put those in the comments, and I'll make sure that I answer them right now in the moment. So don't feel like you can't ask that. Yeah, BitBit, one of my closest friends, has confirmed it. Definitely, this is it. This is what I do. It's who I am. Nice. Bank Bergson, thanks for the 100 sec. Appreciate that. If you have any questions, let me know. Happy to answer them. So anyways, I don't see any questions related to right now. If you have any questions about what I'm speaking about right this moment, let me know and I will answer them. So, all right, let's start building. So we want to build something in Rust. You know, what do? Well, you know, obviously we go to Google, how to install Rust, and there we are. And then first result, install Rust. Great. Run this. Done. So the point, I didn't try to speed through this. You know, this isn't a tutorial on how to install Rust, but it is a way to show that Google has an abundance of knowledge, and it'll get you to where you need to be really fast. You know, within 5 seconds, I landed on the one command that I need to run for my particular system. Of course, this is Linux specific, because Rust just auto-detected what OS I'm on, and it just kind of put me here. And then this will get me Rust installed. So I've already done this step, but this is all it takes to do. And this works with anything. If you want to install PHP, install Java, install whatever, you know, you'll find a litany of resources on how to do so, and you simply follow the one that's related to the language you want to do, and then you're kind of good to go. So once you have it installed and you've created a brand new project, you're left with the classic hello world. And even with this kind of first thing here, this already tells you a little bit about the language. You know, you can already ascertain a couple things. You know, the first thing you can ascertain is that this language likely uses a main function, and this is likely going to be the function that runs when your program is called. You know, this should also tell you that this is likely required. You know, maybe if this is your first language, you might think, well, this is pointless. I don't need a main function. I can just get rid of that. You know, but then when you go to run it, you know, you get all this crazy stuff. It's like can't work or whatever. And then you realize, oh, well, you know, consider adding a main function. And then you realize that I actually did need that main function. So you've learned now that you got to put all your initial code in the main function. And that's something that's clear to me. You know, the second thing is that it gave you an example output. So you have println exclamation mark. You know, as you're learning this language, maybe you don't know what the exclamation mark does, but that doesn't really matter, because you know that this line outputs some text. So This goes back to my example here, work towards a new stable understanding. So at this moment, I have a stable understanding of Rust, and I know that two things are true. I have a main function, and I can use println exclamation mark, and I can supply a string in here to actually output some text. So this is great. I can, I can run this to make it work. Cool, it says hello world. I can do some experimentation. I can put 4 of them. Okay, now I got 4, and I see that they're separated by new lines. So from there, I can ascertain that this ln probably means print line, meaning that it'll add the new line automatically. So at this point, I could, you could experiment and say, well, maybe there's just a print. What if I get rid of the ln? Maybe that works. And then you go to run it, and you realize that, oh, it does work. It does work, and it just doesn't have a new line. And you find that that's exactly what that is. So you can kind of, and this is an important thing to do, is try things that make sense. Language designers, they're trying to make languages be really logical and consistent. This isn't the case everywhere. Like PHP is a good example of how that is wildly not true, as its language design is highly inconsistent. But sometimes things like this work. So if println works, well, maybe print works. And the worst thing that happens is you run it and it doesn't work. That's the worst thing that happens. So now I have a new stable understanding. I know how to print, I know how to print a line, and I know that my code runs in the main function. So now it's time to start composing the program. So if I'm building a guessing game, what's kind of the first step to that? I mean, the first step would seem to me to be that I should ask the user, say, what their name is. So I can greet them, like, hello, Brian. Welcome to the high-low game. So I know how to do a print, so I can do something here, like, welcome to the high-low game. No problem. Got my code working. So the next thing in my program that I'm probably gonna have to do is I need to actually collect the name of the user. I need to ask the user what's their name. And I don't know how to do this. Maybe I could find it in the docs, possibly, but in this case, I'm just gonna hit up Google. I'm just gonna ask, how to get user input in Rust. And then I'm sure I'm gonna find something, how to get user input, help. I'm gonna look at it here. So it tells me here, first thing, it says to do all this. But this is kind of confusing, and this is one thing that you need to do is you don't want to just copy and paste this entire thing. Don't just grab all this code and just chuck it into your file, because that's not helpful to you. Remember, you're trying to learn. The important thing is that you learn how to do something, not make something work. That's ultimately the primary thing. So if you look at this, you can kind of ascertain how some of this works. Use probably just means that you're gonna use these things. So you're gonna use something called standard in, standard out, and write. And then it looks like here it's going to create a new string. And then, print, you've seen that before. So that's already part of your current stable understanding of the language. So this would, print some text, standard out.flush. Maybe you don't know what that means, so you can just copy that line as is, even though you don't know what it means. What it actually means is that it pushes the output to the actual terminal. And then standard in read line. So this is probably the money line right here. This must be it. Read a line, easy. And then at mute s. Okay, cool. So again, you can kind of read what's going on here. You don't necessarily have to know for sure how it works, but let's just take some of this code here and just dump it in. Of course, we'll put this up here, where it belongs. So this is probably our string. We see that it's likely reading that line into that string. We can ascertain that because this is the only string in the code, and this is where it's being passed in. So we can kind of assume that that's what that's for. So please enter some text. We can probably replace that with please tell me your name. So this should print to the user their name, and then this is probably going to push it to the terminal, and then this should read that input into this variable called s. And we could save it and run it and see what happens. You know, maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. So it says, please tell me your name. We'll put Brian, and then it kind of just ends. And that's I guess it's working. You know, that looks right to me. So now at this point you can experiment. So you don't know what standard out.flush does, but there's a kind of a way to figure out what it does is just by commenting it out. You know, if I comment this out, how does it actually work now? So I'll come back here and I'll run it again, and I see that it says welcome to the high-low game, and then it just kind of freezes. I type something, and then it says please tell me your name. So that's bizarre. That didn't work as expected, but this should indicate to you that it's because if you don't, well, what's actually happening is that Rust is buffering the output and it's not actually pushing it to the terminal, and then this basically just forces it to do so. That's what it's actually doing. But that should indicate to you that that's what's happening here. It's like, all right, well, I need it because if I don't have it, it's not going to print it out. So that's why that's there like that. Let's check the questions here. All right, we're good. So we have a new, you know, back to the notes again, back to the notes, you know, we have a new stable understanding now. Our new stable understanding now is that we know how to make new strings. String : : new. And maybe there's another way to do it, but it's not important if there's other ways. It's just important that you have an understanding on how to do it now. And that's the important thing. So we also have an understanding on how to read things into strings. And we're probably going to use this later because remember, it's a high-low guessing game. So that means the user is going to have to give additional input farther down in the code. So right off the bat, we know we're going to be able to reuse this. We already know how it works. So we'll be able to just copy that down to the next place that we need it. So we got their name, and then now what's next? You know, the next thing, of course, is going to be probably actually generating a random number, you know, for them to guess. And the high-low game, just for those that don't know, high-low game is basically the computer guesses a number between 1 and 50, and then you have to say, well, they guess an initial number. They guess an initial number, like say 20, and then the computer guesses another number, and you have to guess if their next guess is higher or lower than the current number. So that's what we're building. So next thing we got to do is make the computer choose a random number. So again, we're going to go to Google and figure it out. You know, like, so we could do this one of two ways. We can either just type in generate random number with Rust, and then maybe it finds something, you know, Stack Overflow, of course, is your friend here, but you know, I can't stress this enough. You know, Stack Overflow is both a blessing and a crutch. You know, like, don't be the guy that comes to Stack Overflow and just starts copying tons of code into your program and just hope it works. Like, use Stack Overflow to help you learn about something specific. So it's like, all right, top answer here. You know, there's been a lot of change in Rust. You know, okay. Code for master, it looks like task RNG gen range. So I guess it's you generate a range between a low value and a top value, but you know, okay, cool. Well, that's kind of confusing. You know, you look down here. All right, well, this is a little easier. This is just use rand RNG. Thread RNG gen range 0 to 100. You know, that's a lot clearer of an example. You don't have to always use the first example. You could just find the one that is kind of clear to you. And this one is the one that's website. It's like not big enough. You know, this is the one that's most clear to me. Thread RNG, gen range. And again, I look at this and I don't know exactly what it means. So you can actually go and research that. You know, rand is going to be, but let's just type it. Rust rand. Well, yeah, let's see what that gets us. Rand, Rust, docs. Perfect. So we go to Rust documentation. So we see now that rand is a crate, and a crate's going to be a third-party module that you can install for Rust. And then hopefully in here, it's going to tell me a little bit what I need to know. It tells me the modules, tells me the structs, tells me the traits. And then this is going to be kind of a part where I'm going to abridge a portion of this. You would have to research some of this. You'd have to first look up traits, like what is traits? I don't see any functionality in here. But if you were to research traits, you would see that traits is a collection of code that can be implemented onto a struct or something else. So in this case, I look at this and I think of, RNG, an automatically implemented extension trait of RNG core, providing high-level generic methods for sampling values and other convenience methods. So I see that and I think that's probably the money. Click it. Let's check it out. And then here it is. Look, gen range. That's what I want. So now we're actually somewhere. We found the functionality for this. And then at this point, you're really just consuming docs. You're reading the docs, just learning about the language. So gen range, we know gen range is important to what we're trying to do because we saw it in Stack Overflow. Maybe we weren't 100% sure on how it worked, but now we are. So we're at gen range. Some guy in Sandy, thank you for the 1111 random comment. Thanking you for your time. Not a problem at all. Thank you very much for being on the stream. I hope it's very helpful to you and others. If you have any questions, please let me know. And I recognize your name. I know you've been on other streams and Discord before, so thank you for being a regular here. I really appreciate that, and also the support. So gen range, this is a lot clearer example. This is not Stack Overflow. This is official Rust docs, and everything in the Rust docs, you're realizing now that this is a wealth of knowledge. So if you have problems, you can just get it in the docs. So this is a lot clearer to me. Use rand, thread RNG. Maybe you don't understand what that means, but that's okay. You know it's a use statement, so it probably just imports something that you use. And then here, this is pretty clear. RNG, thread RNG. Not sure exactly what that does. That probably initializes a entropy pool, for generating randomness. And then gen range, this seems pretty obvious what that does. Generates a number between 0 and 10. Although in this case, it tells you it's low to high, inclusive of low, exclusive of high, so it's actually 0 to 9. So this is the code that I think I need. I can drop that in there. And I know I want a number between 1 and 50, so that range would be 1 and 51. So now I've learned how to do random numbers, and I could probably just test this, print line. And again, if you research println, you'd find that you can format different variables by using the curly braces. So, I'm not going to go out and research that. Just know that it wouldn't take long. If you search for Rust format string, then you would easily find, that particular thing. So we can kind of check to see if it works. And again, a lot of this is experiment. So, 11, 5, 11 again, 3. So it seems to be working. Those are kind of low numbers, but I'm sure it's fine. So we have a new stable understanding. We know how to make strings. We know how to read things into a string from user input, and we know how to generate random numbers. That's pretty cool. We've learned 3 things, and it took us 5 minutes of Googling and checking out the Rust docs. Thank you for inspiring me to return to coding after 20 years. I'm glad I gained the same level of proficiency with Python as I have with C++ at one time. That is fantastic. I'm glad to be the source of that inspiration. It really doesn't matter. I've taken some time off as well. There was a period where I don't think I did any programming for probably 4 or 5 years. And not anything serious, I've a little bit here and there. So, it's, you can always come back to it. It's like riding a bike. You start programming again and it's like you never left. So really glad you've come back to coding. It's the technological landscape in 2019, 2020, of course, is a lot different than back in 2000. So I think you'll really like it. Also, welcome to the stream. Welcome to the community. Hope to see you around on streams and Discord. So we have a great understanding here. We can generate random numbers and take input. So let's just keep moving. So now that we have a random number generated and we have the person's name, we need to just kind of start producing the actual guess loop. You know, obviously if they get it right, they get to guess again. Obviously if they get it wrong, then the game ends and they got to start it over. So we probably need a couple variables here. And now we didn't research variables, but we do kind of see what a variable might be. We know it's the let keyword. It's obvious that the let keyword is going to be the, what is going on in chat? Okay. You know, it's very clear to me right now that the let keyword is related to variables. So I could probably just say, well, we need to track the number of like successful guesses they did. So let's just do score. Let score equals 0. And you can check if something works simply by just running it. You know, if you run it and the compiler doesn't complain, then you know everything's fine. This says unused variable, but you know, in your learning, you'll look at that and say, well, that's fine. I'm going to eventually use it, so not a big deal. I could probably ignore that. You know, at this moment, it seems to be working. And then if you took a second to research variables, you'd find that the let keyword is in fact the one you'd use. And you'd also find that the mute keyword is the one you would use for a variable that you anticipate changing at some point. So you have your score variable, no problem. Next thing you need to do is, actually we need to rename this. This is not n. You know, this is going to be guess. You know, this is going to be the computer's guess. So we have a guess, we have a score, and now we want to create like a loop. So, you know, maybe we can do like Rust infinite loop. You know, how do we do that? You know, loops, the Rust book. To do an infinite loop, you simply use the loop keyword. Okay, the infinite loop is the simplest form of loop available in Rust. Using the loop keyword, Rust provides a way to loop indefinitely. Well, that sounds fantastic. And then, you know, if you scroll down a little bit, it gives you some other options, but this will probably work perfectly fine. Infinite loop, wonderful. So we start our infinite loop, and then in here we can run the actual game, you know, each tick, and, you know, make people make a guess or whatever. So at this point, we have the computer's guess. The guess is going to be 1 through, you know, the first guess is going to be 1 through 51. So we have to actually output that. You know, the output would be like print line. Again, we already know how to print things. We know how to format them, so no problem there. My guess is guess. And then that'll have the computer output what it just guessed. And then the user needs to actually make their guess now. So we can print some help text. And in this case, we're just going to print, not print line, you know, because we don't want it to go to the next line. And we can say higher or lower. You know, then we could say like H or L or whatever. And then we need to take their input. We need to know if they're going to guess higher or lower. So we can, again, we can reuse something we already know. Like we already know how to do that. It's right here. So we'll just bring it down here. Look at that. And remember, we're making it functional. Functional and clear. That's it. We're not trying to make anything crazy, anything like that. We're just trying to make it work. So we know, I guess we could also rename this. You know, we know it's a name. We can clean this up a little bit. You know, maybe format a little better, make it a little easier to read. So we don't need the second print statement. We already did that. And then this string's not going to be S. It's going to be, you know, user guess. And then we'll read that into that variable. So we're reading that line into user guess. And then now it's a matter of just processing that guess. So if, and this is where I had a note. I wanted to go back to a note on here. One way to learn a language quick is to draw parallels between languages. So if you've used another language like JavaScript or Python or whatever, then you know you can compare strings simply by doing if whatever. And you also maybe already know ifs. So with Rust, you can simply try, you know, maybe the if syntax you know from another language already works in Rust. And this would be a good time to do that. The only thing I'm gonna do here is just a run long time is going to add that. That will just strip off the new line from the string, or from the user guess. So right now, I'm just going to try to just do what this will look like in another language. I'm going to say if user, if user guess equals h, you know, like, does that work? Okay, well, it's complaining. What's it complaining about? Unnecessary parentheses around if condition. Cool. So I can just get rid of these. Nice. Save it again. It's not complaining. So it looks like something that I already knew about another language seemed to actually work in Rust. So that's pretty cool. And then I need to say, you know, if the user guess is high, and again, this is a language construct from another language. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. You know, we'll find out if the compiler complains. And user guess is greater than the computer guess, then this would be a, you know, they would have done this correctly. So we should let the user know. And again, our understanding of printing output is already formed. So we can print line and say something like, you got it right. Next round. So we also need to test for the low case, and again, we're just going, oh, the compiler is complaining. So this is currently a string. The guess is a string. What's going on here? Mismatch types. Expected type, string, found type, U32. I don't know why it's doing that. Oh, it's not user guess. Sorry, it's let's see. Oh, the problem is that I didn't make the next guess. That was the problem. Sorry, I'm doing the wrong thing here. What I gotta do is I gotta generate a second random number, and we're gonna call that next guess. So we have the current guess, and then we have the next guess. That will also be a U32. So it's at this time I need to generate another number. So we've already generated one number. I can really just, I could almost just copy this part over and say, you know, next guess is a random number between 1 and 51. So now what I'm looking at is I'm looking at if the next guess is greater than the current guess. Of course, it's going to complain there. It's saying that can't do it because it's not mutable. And it even tells you what to do. It's saying consider adding, you know, mute keyword. So I did that. It's done. So at this point, we're going to test the low case. And again, we know in other languages we can use else if. You know, in Python it's elif, in JavaScript it's else if. And we could just test to see if that works in Rust. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. Else if user guess equals L, and next guess is less than guess. We could save it. It still works. Great. Copy our output. You got it right. Next round. Now remember, we need to increment the score because we need to track how often we can do that. So, you know, maybe another language, we know that that's ++ score, but we do that in Rust and it says doesn't work. Okay, no problem. So it didn't work this time. We tried to use something from another language and Rust said no thanks. I can't do that. So we got to go back to Google and check it out. You know, how to increment variables in Rust. And just have a look. Well, look, this is exactly it. Why can't I increment a variable like this? I bet you anything it's a ++. Yep, there it is. You know, why is this invalid? Other languages allow you to increment a variable like 1. Why can't you do it in Rust? So we know this is talked about. Probably in here is also an answer. So people say that you got to do +=1. So great, that's all I need to know. So instead of ++ score, I do score +=1. And then, you know, it's complaining because it's not mutable. Make it mutable. And now we're good there. And I'm using compiler feedback to help me learn the language as well. Like if the compiler complains and says something's wrong, it's also going to let me know possibly how to fix it. So I can fix it real quick. And then I need to do the final case. Else is probably just else. And the final case is basically that they're going to have lost. I'm just going to paste on this coding because we're running low on time here. So, sorry you lose. The number was next guess, and then we'll break from that loop. And then if they get out of this loop, it essentially means that the game has been lost. So we'll print them one more message that will say, thanks for playing. You got, number of score right. And then we can kind of check our program. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. We'll see if it does. What is your name? Brian. My guess was 17, higher or lower. Okay, we'll pick H. Sorry you lose, number was 2. You got 0 right. So we can try it again. Make sure it works. Hi. Oh, I lost again. I'm really bad at my own game. 26. L. You got it right. Guess is 26. Is that a bug? Did I make a bug or just happen to guess the same thing again? Okay, so you see something's broken because it says I got 0 right even though I won. So, oh, see, I made a bug. See, if on the L case, I didn't actually increment the score. So I can copy that in. I can test it again. Okay, so I can already see something's wrong. It's not incrementing the actual number. And the reason for that, I think, is because I never actually changed my guess. What I need to do is I need to set that to the next guess. So I need to increment the score, and then guess needs to become the next guess, because then I come up with a different guess. And assigning variables, I could just try it out, and if it works, then that's fantastic. So now I try it one more time. Oh, definitely lower than 50. Nice, got it right. 18, higher. Oh, good, good. Oh, killing it. Got it. Okay, so I lost. Number was 50. Thanks for playing. You got 4 right. So that's my program. That's kind of it. In 44 lines of code and probably 4 or 5 Google searches, I created something that is trivial but telling. If we review the program, we realize that in this short period of time and in this short program, we really learned a lot of fundamentals. We learned how to output stuff to the screen, both with and without a trailing new line. We learned how to create new strings, and also, and also at the same time how to make variables. We're not entirely sure what that does, but we know it seems to push output to the screen so it doesn't buffer, but it's not, in the near term, it's not super important that you have a full understanding of that. Of course, you can research standard out and flush to find out the exact inner workings. And then we learned how to do random number generation. That was very simple. Call thread RNG and then call genRange, on RNG. And then we get random numbers like that, no problem. We learned about loops. We learned about formatting. We learned about getting user input. And then we learned about simple if statements. And we did so just by using control flow from other languages that just happen to work in Rust. And that makes it just really easy. And then we learned about incrementing variables and assigning variables to other variables. So we learned a lot of fundamentals in this really short period of time with not a whole lot of Googling. We kind of just bootstrapped our way to this small program. So we're running a long time. I know we have only 1 minute. The stream's probably going to go 5 or 10 minutes late, but I wanted to cover a couple things really quick. In your initial learning, avoid third-party modules. You'll notice that I didn't use any modules. However, I actually did. Just a brief note. I did use the rand crate, but rand is something that it used to be built into the standard library of Rust, but they would later remove it and then move it to its own crate. So I kind of think of that as, well, what I mean by third-party libraries is when you start using third-party libraries that abstract out and wrap large swaths of core functionality, you introduce confusion in your learning as to what it does. But Rand, this can also be Rand and Rust, even though it's its own crate, can be thought of as the idiomatic way to do random number generation. So in that case, I don't see that as a third-party module in the way that I'm describing it here. So, and the other portion of that is just a brief story. It's the I don't know Ruby, I know Rails story. I worked with a guy who used to say that I don't know Ruby, I know Rails. And Rails is a framework that's built on Ruby. And when he told me that, it kind of, it sounded really strange to me, but I finally understood it. It's that he learned something that was a highly abstracted version of a language and never really understood the core language itself. This is kind of the same of I know jQuery, but not JavaScript, even though jQuery is written in JavaScript. It's you get ingrained in this idea that jQuery is the language and not JavaScript, and it just confuses your learning. When you finally have to go learn about JavaScript directly, now you're all messed up. So of course, make use of the official docs, make use of Google. We did that in this video. Google makes it very easy to find things. Or DuckDuckGo, it doesn't have to be Google. I should probably stop promoting Google on this channel because Google in general is kind of evil. So probably actually going forward, we're gonna use DuckDuckGo for everything. And then, focus on the essentials. Focus on your output, your variables, and your control flow, because you can do a lot of really cool things just with that, as you saw, in this video. So let's do about 5 or 10 minutes of Q&A, and then we'll wrap it up. You mentioned that you'll be having a stream regarding blockchain development in your last stream about mobile development. When should we expect it? Blockchain stream is going to be on November 16th. And then the mobile development stream, we actually already did that. We did state of mobile development about, I think, 1 or 2 streams ago. So Kaylee, that was fun. Thank you. Thank you for the $10. I recognize your name as well. I know you're a regular on stream and in Discord. So thank you for being here. I appreciate that. And I appreciate the support. All the donations today, actually all the donations today are going to cover almost all the postage for the stickers, just about. So I'll be applying all of that to, actually everybody that donated today, please make sure you do 2 things. Go to Discord and ask one of my staff to give you the supporters role. And then make sure that you let me know, and I will send you some stickers free of charge. Just send me your address. I'll send them anywhere in the world. Just send me your address. And that's for everybody that donated today, as well as in the past. Okay, so next question. Best sources for someone like myself to learn JavaScript. Find there's a lot of info and sources on the web, but overwhelming. The best place to learn JavaScript without question is the JavaScript MDN, which is hosted by Mozilla. It's a fantastic resource for JavaScript, and it has both, low-level API docs as well as some high-level tutorials and concepts about JavaScript. And that's going to be the JavaScript, the language, versus any kind of, subsection of JavaScript. So that's the best way. Just Google JavaScript MDN, MDN like the Mozilla Developer Network. Thanks for the sticker. Oh yes, yeah, I recognize that, Kay. So I know who you are. Yeah, I'm glad to hear that you got your sticker. If you want any more, please let me know. Let's see. Some guy in Sandy. I'm gonna answer this question because you gave me a donation earlier. What was the most complex program you have written? So I worked in high volume commercial background checks and background screening for a while, and I wrote a lot of programs that did integrations between systems, particularly vendors and court and legal systems, and I did tens, if not hundreds of these. And that's probably the most complex thing I did because they were all a little bit different and they all had to interoperate within, with each other. And I found that to be extremely complex software. So that's probably my most complex stuff I've done. And also I had to deal with volume. You know, this is high volume, doing tens, if not hundreds of thousands of stuff daily. And at peak times, you know, hundreds or thousands a minute at you know, at certain times. So Quazo asks, I often struggle to understand some texts if I don't know why or how they came to be or what they replace, like CI/CD principles, orchestration, containers. Any tips of getting over the hump? I think, you know what I like to do is I like to try to do things what I call the hard way. And then I like to go out and find technology that supposedly solves the problems that are part of the hard way. And in that way, you kind of get the best of both worlds. You understand how to do it the hard way, and then you understand how to do it the easy way. And that's good because you got to understand both. You know, if you're using a CI/CD technology, you know, like Circle CI or Jenkins or Travis or whatever, then you kind of need to also understand, like, what is it doing at a low level? But if you're just wondering how it all fits in, there's a lot of what you listed here is something I'd call DevOps. And DevOps is kind of this thing where it's a specific trade with a specific skill set, but at the same time, it's one of those things where if you're a developer, you're kind of like expected to know DevOps stuff as well. So the best way is to really just dig in, you know, like Google or DuckDuckGo, you know, best containerized platforms or whatever, and you'll more than likely find like Docker, something like that. Orchestration, you know, you'll undoubtedly find Kubernetes, and then CI/CD you'll find, you know, Circle and Travis and Jenkins and all this kind of stuff. And then a lot of these are open source, so you just kind of hit them up and play with them either in a VM or on your computer, or get a cheap cloud server and work with them there. But the best way to get over the hump is just to dig in and just understand the technology, or try to solve a problem that you might have. Okay, 2 more questions and then that'll be it. Yeah, you said we shouldn't be using third-party modules when wearing a new module, but the R&D module looks like a third-party module. Yep, I already answered that. It is a crate, but it used to be in the standard library, so I kind of just think of it as the standard library, meaning that you wouldn't really generate random numbers using a low-level Rust APIs. You're probably just going to use the rand module, so that's the idiomatic way to do it. Okay, last thing is, can you compile the Rust program to run as a standalone app on a different OS like Windows? Yes, definitely. So Rust will, oh, got another one. $5. Thanks for the stream and the time. I always look forward to new streams. Thanks for answering my JS question. We'll check out the Mozilla docs. High fives from RSA. Cool. Thank you very much. And I know I also sent you a sticker, so I hope you got that. If you want another one, please let me know. You're more than welcome to have one. Yeah, you can absolutely compile it to another platform. Like Rust is backed by LLVM, which is very advanced architecture, not architecture, but very advanced tooling, which allows programs to run on tons of platforms: Windows, Mac, Unix, Linux, as well as several others. So you shouldn't have a problem running it really anywhere. Would you maybe in the future do a live coding video on making a project in Rust? Yes. Yeah, I think in the future that is possible. In fact, a lot of people have been asking me, you know, with regard to my Rust series, they want to see more videos where I actually do a practical use of the language rather than just like teaching discrete topics about the language. So I think in the future, definitely be looking out for that. I'm going to do some videos where I actually build like legit programs so people can see kind of how everything I've got finished teaching gets put together. And it's kind of what I did here, but what I did here was I did the research as well. You know, I tried not to use anything that I already knew. I tried to show how I would go out and find basic things about a language and then use them to accomplish something new. I think that's pretty much it. Bippet said, where's my sticker? The answer is you have not sent me your address. And then last question. What do you think about concepts like freelance or mob programming? I think, so I don't know what mob programming is. And then freelance, we said concepts. I guess I don't understand that question. If you want that answered, let me know a more, elaborate on that question a little bit so I can understand what you're asking. And I think that's it. I think I covered everybody's questions, so we'll wrap up at this point. The last thing I'll say is if you want to go further with your learning, or if you want to join a real great community, of course, we are on Discord. I'm also always there all the time. If you want to speak with me or you want to get into discussions with other people, there's lots of smart people, tons of smart people, a total of, I think we got 6,200, 6,300 people on there now, and then about 800 or 900, maybe 1,000 are online and active at any given time. So it's a great place to be. There's a link in the chat, or should be shortly, and you can come over there and check it out, say hi to me. As far as the feature schedule, we'll be meeting here again in 2 weeks from right now, and the topic will be, oh, it's gonna be a good one. You're not gonna wanna miss the next one. The next one is reverse engineering IoT device APIs. You do not wanna miss that. That's gonna be so interesting and a lot of fun, and you're gonna learn a lot of things. And then hopefully you can use that knowledge to do cool things with, certain IoT devices. Of course, not all of them will be able to be, used as I'll be using them, but don't miss that stream. That one's gonna be good. And then still working on a 250K video. I actually intend on doing some work on that today. It's getting there. It's been some production delays for various reasons, equipment and time and whatnot. So I'm definitely working on that. And then I might be putting out a video tomorrow. I might not. Just depends if I have the time. Otherwise, I'm gonna try to get a video out Wednesday if I don't, because we don't have a stream next Saturday. So I'll be sure to put that out. If you again, for the stickers, any donators today, please let me know. I'll send you 4 or 5 stickers, no problem. And then if you're interested in making a donation to help fund the postage for stickers for other people, then please let me know if you'd like to do that, and I'll be getting some of these stickers out. Otherwise, I'll probably end up selling them for like 3 for a couple bucks, something like that. Just depends on what kind of rate I can get for the card charging. So more on that, stay tuned on that. I'll be making an announcement in Discord, and then we can go from there. So that concludes the stream. Thank you everybody for coming, especially the regulars. I'm constantly seeing the same names here, which is fantastic. So there's the regular group of people. I recognize everybody who is here all the time. So thanks for that. Thanks of course to the staff for helping make this happen. And then I hope to see you on Discord, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your weekend. And then I, of course, hope to see you in 2 weeks from now on the next stream. So other than that, take care, and I'll see you around.